Hi, my name is Michael Chikeen. The smartest people I've met have one common belief that us silly humans really don't know much. For example, we still don't know why planes stay in the air, or how Tylenol or even gravity works. Yeah, gravity. Look it up. In today's distracted, clickbait, misinformation age, I wish we could all be less certain, more humble, and a lot more curious. Admittedly, I've been known to struggle with all three. So, no more, no less, this show is my attempt to be that change. Thanks for joining me, and here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to No More, No Less. My name is Michael Chikeen, and today I'm chatting with Aaron Stark. Aaron's currently on a mission where he has turned the darkest moments of his life into a bright light that helps the rest of us to understand the unfathomable. Aaron grew up in a painful and abusive environment. He witnessed and experienced violence and substance abuse all around him. He experimented with various coping strategies over the years, both helpful and harmful, but at the age of 15, his capacity to cope ran out. In 1996, Aaron planned to acquire a firearm and attack either North High School or the food court of a local mall. Thankfully, the kindness of a friend altered the trajectory of Aaron's plan, his life, and now he shares his story with the TEDx stage, law enforcement, and audiences like ours to help anyone who might be listening. So today we're going to dive deep into the darkness with Aaron, and he's going to show us the light. Aaron Stark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I've listened and watched several of your interviews and presentations to prepare for this chat, and one thing I feel that your story is helping many of us understand is that school shooters or people that tend to perpetrate that kind of violence and violent behavior, it doesn't just fall from the sky or erupt because someone played Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty or things like that. The way I'm understanding it is that it's really seeded from a toxic environment over time in relationships, and I'd love to know if you agree with that or how you see that.
I completely agree. In my opinion, nobody ever starts in the pitch black. Nobody ever does. It's always a journey. Even the absolute worst, like think of the worst monster you could possibly think of. Someone like even like a Jeffrey Dahmer. At one time, that was a baby. That was a baby giggling and laughing and playing around. That didn't start as a cannibal monster. Like there was a path that was walked down. And I feel like it's really important to shine a bright light on that path because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about what depression's really like, what self-harm actually is, that kind of the people looking out from the outside tend to want to stereotype and put things into boxes because it's much safer when things are in a box. It's a lot easier to not have to actually grasp with the reality of what it is. And the reality of it, in my opinion, from what I've found talking with audiences across the country, is that it's almost universal. This sense of self longing, that the self immolation. I'm not good enough inside, and I need to burn myself apart to fit my world. And that kind of feeling, it can express itself in multiple ways. And if it's not, if the kindness and goodness isn't cultivated, and if the darkness is pushed forward and applauded, and the anger and aggression is kind of the lifestyle, then that vocabulary of aggression and darkness just grows. It grows from that one sentence that I'm not good enough to everybody's not good enough to the everybody hates me to I hate me to and I hate me is one of the worst sentences that can happen. Because as soon as you start hating yourself, you when you hate yourself enough, you come to the conclusion that you're worthless and you're nothing, and then you do everything you can to make everybody agree with you. And that is a very terrible spot to be.
That is really interesting. It actually this afternoon I have these writing calls with people that are undergoing these creative projects, and there was one girl I was chatting to, and we were having a similar conversation to one you just had about like um, hating yourself and loving yourself and how you treat people, and it's so true that if you have this internal dialogue that I'm unlovable and this is your worldview, I think we end up we end up taking actions towards people that kind of create the environment for what we think inside our head. Like she was telling me that she
Hmm.
would be dating guys in the past, and she's trying to undo these sorts of habits now, and she's been quite successful. But saying that like she would just be in relationships with like super toxic guys, and she would just be even treating them terrible, or even if she met a great guy, she'd be treating him terrible because in her mind, I'm unlovable. So if someone's trying to love you, but you believe you're unlovable, you're just going to act in a way that's going to teach that other person that they can't love you.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that early on in everybody's life, we crave identity. We crave figuring out who we are. Everybody wants to
Right.
figure out who we are. And if the thing that you decide you are is broken, then if anybody sees you as other than that, then you think they're lying. Like if you think I'm good, then obviously you don't see the real me, because the real me is broken and busted, and I'll show you because this is the real me I know I am. And that's a really hard place to get out of. And it's because to get into it, it takes a lot of trauma. It takes a lot of I think at the base of it, everybody wants to be held and told that you're okay, starting from the base of life, from the beginning of life. And
Right.
if you aren't nurtured and cared for early on and had your in ways that aren't just hugs and kisses and smiles, but having your dreams actually applauded and having your the things you like be having you be noticed, because when you aren't noticed and you start feeling invisible and you start feeling like you're losing yourself, you'll do what you can to fit into whatever spot you think you deserve. And if that's the kids who are told that they deserve to be sports stars and they want to be jocks, they go up to be sports stars. The kids who are told early on that you deserve to be a cook and you deserve to be in a restaurant, they'll go to learn to be in a restaurant. If you're told that you deserve to be in a closet and you deserve to eat nothing but bread, and you deserve to sit in the dark room while everybody else is at the table having fun, like that will be what you think you deserve. And
Wow.
we up until we're age 12 or 13, we're not actually people. I don't think. I think that up until we're 12 or 13, we're sponges. We absorb and interact with everybody around us because we have no agency. You have no agency and no control over anything that you're around. You have no control over what you're eating, what you're watching, who you're around, what the things you're doing, clothes you're wearing, the environment you're in, the time that you spend each day, what you're doing at what time. You have no control over any of that. That's all controlled by other people around you. And
Right.
once you start to get that kind of agency over your life, that first portion of your that first 12 years will really color where you land after that. I haven't seen anybody where that's not the case. I haven't seen anybody like I'm just a regular dude, so I don't have a degree talking about this. It's just my experience talking about it. But I've never seen anybody where that's not the case. The things that happened early on in their life didn't affect them forever.
Yeah,
And
I don't think that is the case unless they have some sort of soap opera amnesia
yeah,
at some point. Well, like with that said, I think it goes into what I wanted to say about shame. That like the people I've met that have been through really traumatic stuff in their past, either that they've perpetrated or that they've had done to them, and they
mhm.
carry that around with them, and they don't want to tell anybody. It seems to be this toxic sludge that weighs them down their whole life. But people that kind of open the door and shine that light, as you mentioned, I see them really free themselves because they own it. That like this happened to me, but it isn't me. And so I
that
was wondering. Go ahead.
that quite literally happened to me. That entire flip happened to me right around 2018 when I came out with my story. Because up until 2018, I it wasn't something my past wasn't something that I ever hid. It just wasn't something I brought up.
Right.
But it wasn't something I've never been ashamed of myself. It was just my identity, and I thought at the time that it was like a black mark, that if anybody ever really found out about all of me, that they'd hate me, and it was like a millstone around my neck, like, and it caused me to be very unhealthy. I had gained a ton of weight.
Wow.
I was up to almost 500 pounds. I was 478 pounds. Yeah. The same time the same time I did my TED talk, I was also in the process of losing over 200 pounds. So currently I walk around about 280 pounds. And so, yeah, I'm just about 200 pounds down from before.
Nice.
But that toxicity had eaten me alive, and it had made me mean. And even till 2018, I wasn't outwardly mean, but I would always make self-deprecating jokes and make fun of myself, and I would always like assume that people didn't like me and didn't want me around, and I would assume that I was the burden to everybody. And then when I finally came out, and it was because I had that shame. I hadn't internalized it, and while I wasn't expressing it, it was more of like I had accepted it. It was a long-standing residual effect of accepting my negative status when I was a kid early on. I had accepted I was the nothing, and I had gotten better, but I was the high end of low.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. I understand. Well,
and
because one thing I wanted to ask you about that is obviously you didn't carry out that plan, and that's
mhm.
why you're having this conversation, etc. But did you ever find that there was a moment that you had to forgive yourself for having that plan, or to like forgive yourself for being in that? Like, has that moment ever
Yes,
transpired?
yeah, yes, and so, but there's that's multifaceted. So that actually happened. In all honesty, that happened right around 2018. I had kind of it in two in that's a hard answer. So first part of that answer is that when I was about 19 years old, right after that, the birthday party that I talk about, one of my friends saved me when I was trying to kill myself. That I had kind of like a moment of clarity, and that was kind of a step into sanity for the first time in a long, long time, and the first step towards getting out of all of that toxicity. And right after that, I have my move towards what I call acknowledgement, when I first started going to the people that hurt me and telling them exactly how I felt, and being like that it started. We're kind of going a roundabout way to tell the story. We're going to start at the end, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
We'll get back to the beginning, but there's a couple things I wanted to get into before we like go right into the darkest, deepest place.
yeah, yeah. So the starting at the recovery part, when I first told my aunt that, when she told me that drunkenly at a bar, she's like, "Oh, you love me," and I stopped and said, "No, I don't. I don't actually love you. You tried to kill yourself in front of me. You tried to molest me. I don't love you, and I'm done." And she started screaming and flipping out, and I just turned it a white noise for me, and it felt like an anvil jumped off my chest. It was like instant relief, and that set me on a path of that acknowledgement. We're going to all the people that hurt me, to do that kind of process, to like close off those relationships, not to do it in a way, never to do it in a sense that you did this and you need to pay. It was always, you did this, our relationship is fundamentally changed, and I'm done. And it had nothing to do with their response. Some of them yelled, some of them cried, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get it off of me and walk away. And in that point, I had come to terms with the fact that I'm letting go of that dark self. I'm letting go of all that past. But this is why it's a two-part answer. Because at that point, I kind of came to terms with, yes, I'm sorry for, I felt really remorseful for what had happened. And I was kind of dropping the whole school shooter, the angry, extreme toxicity stuff. I was in the process of getting out of that. But then for the next 30 years, that still, it still colored who I was. It still was in the background. Like my toxic family was still there. I still made fun of myself all the time. It the depression shifted to a more manageable state. It shifted out of the extreme um, crisis areas into more of a like a status quo, in a way, where I just knew I was bad, but I was unhealthy, and I was toxic, and people didn't like me much, and it was just kind of, it became my adopted personality. And then in 2018, when I finally came out with my story, I think I experienced what psychologists call ego death, where I had to fully let go of all the shell that I had constructed, which was entirely a shell, for years, to protect myself from myself. That I had that my self-deprecating humor and my toxic affectations and all of that was all a way to reaffirm to myself that I was still that bad person, and I still deserved it.
Hmm.
And it was that the real growth came when I finally became fully honest with myself and the world and dropped every bit of facade. Like what you see is what you get. I'm a regular dude. I work at a gas station. I go around and I talk. I don't have a script. I don't prepare for things. I just, because honesty and reality is if that can help anybody, then that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so even in my life, my daily life, I don't lie. I don't manipulate. I don't, the tools of survival that I was taught for decades of how to do by the best people of how to teach it, by a most very toxic and aggressive family and very professional liars, very good mentors for that kind of subject. I had to consciously drop all of that, and in the process, reconnect with things like compassion and emotion and feeling and now I sit and I will cry at a song. I will sit and watch a commercial that hits me and I'll start crying. And my daughter looks over to me and is like, "What are you crying about, Dad?" I'm like, "Well, they've got their daughter and they're just so sweet." Yeah, I have reconnected with all of that. And in the process of 2018, was like a raw exposed nerve. It was like my wife told me I was like an emotional baby. Like I had to figure out what emotions were again because I had disconnected from that for so long. And so yeah, now I'm 6 years into it, and I feel like a new man entirely.
That is so amazing to hear because like I've even been in rooms with men doing it like men's work and talking about things and some guys have said like I'm okay, I'm letting myself feel all these feelings and I don't know what to do with them. Like I
Hmm.
don't know and so you're 6 years into this. How did you start recoding things that you would understand so that you can have your feelings and not be controlled by them, you can feel them and not like be overwhelmed?
Hmm.
How did you figure that
Well,
out?
one of the biggest things that helped was having a partner that I could communicate with, having somebody that I could talk to about this with my wife, where I could actually, and we had a serious sit down like academic talk where we're like, okay, I'm going through this stuff right now. My emotions are coming out. I I'm going to react in weird ways. If I do start reacting in weird ways, talk to me like this. And we started working out code words, and we started working like, hey, we call it the bastard. When I get really stressed out, and if I start to fall into any of the old survival techniques or any of the old systems that my family taught me, if any of the old me starts coming out, my wife was like, hey, the bastard's getting out. You need to put that back in the cage. And I'm like, all right, no, I got you. I see what you're talking about here. We need to assess the situation, and I need to put logic into the situation. The more logic I can put into it, which is weird because it's dealing with emotions, but the way I dealt with it was I assessed it with the same kind of logic that I would assess dealing with a professional in any kind of situation I'm in. And with that, I have a goal, and my goal is to be a whole person. My goal is to not be just the shell that I've always put out for everybody, because now I see it's like risk reward. Everybody, men deal a lot in risk reward situations where if this is going to cost me, I'm not going to do it. But if the reward is good enough, the cost can be pretty high. But if the
Right.
reward is still good enough, I'm still going to do this. It has to balance out that equation. To me, the risk reward situation has balanced out where I have seen the positive from connecting with deep emotions, from doing things like crying, from crying on stage in front of other people. The
Mm-hmm.
positive of a man crying in front of other men is exponential, and I've seen it firsthand. And it's something that I will never take back, and I will always continue with, because that kind of power is something that you can't experience till you experience it, and that's something everybody should. I think
Wow.
to me that is
Yeah.
real manliness is not is owning all of who you are. Like I deal with sometimes with what I call the dude bros, the
Right.
ones who are the macho kind of, I'm the man. I got the girl and the cigar and the car. I'm like, okay, well, do what I do one time. Get up on stage and do what I do once. Talk about all your worst pain that you ever went through in front of a group full of strangers, and afterwards let them ask whatever question they want after your deep darkest story, and let them dig in for an hour afterwards and get even deeper into it. And if they find a scab, let them peel it off and dig even deeper. And do that one time. Show me how manly you are.
Yeah.
And because even when they watch me do it, I end up with those same dude bros afterwards. That's not a dude bro. That's Adam, and he's a cool guy, and he's going to come give me a hug, and he's going to cry, and he's going to talk to me about his own life and about when he was a kid, he was bullied, but now he's going to try to help his friend out. Because the shell we have when we see people, we can drop, we can break down, and in the what I think I have the superpower of now, if anything, is those stratifications that we put up in society where this person's rich, this person's poor, that person's atheist, that person's religious, this person's conservative, that person's a Democrat. I walk right through those because none of those matter. Because 99.9% of people at one time have felt inside, I'm not good enough and I need to burn myself apart to fit my world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad that that's the one bipartisan thing that we seem to have. But if it is, then maybe it's something we can use to help heal this giant rift that's growing in society and remind everybody to give love to the ones that you think deserve it the least because they need it the most. It's not about giving love to the ones who deserve it the least because that's your judgment. The one that you feel deserve it the least because it's about your feelings. If you think someone doesn't deserve the love, that's the person you should be loving. And it's not about giving it to them. It's about getting it from you because you should figure out how to love somebody that you don't know how to love. Because that's really how the kindness grows exponentially.
That is really interesting. Every time I want to go back, you say something that I want to dive into a little bit. So let's be the last one before we go backwards in time. So when you said about loving people that you don't know how to love, I would agree. I would agree with some of that in principle. And where I want to see where the line is for you, because like let's take your aunt or your parents or people that were quite cruel to you and all of these things. Where do you draw that line where loving someone becomes more of a hazard to your own personal and mental health, and that it's best to like you can just try to love them, maybe love them inside and not. How do you look at that?
That is a very, very good question, and it is definitely a line that needs to be drawn because that's a very important. Boundaries are extremely important, especially when you're dealing in this subject. And the line that I've personally drawn and what I advocate for people to do is acknowledgement and acceptance and ownership. Like take my mom, for example. I miss my mom every day. I haven't spoken to her in 6 years. I haven't spoken to her since the day I came out. I got approved for my TED Talk. I had just left a live TV show appearance that she saw me on. And right after I got a call from the TED Talk person saying could get a TED Talk, I got a call from her saying I was worthless and I should be dead. And that was the last time I spoke to my mom. And that toxicity and that chaos hasn't stopped over there. There's been no ownership. I get attacked just because I came out talking, not because what I'm saying isn't the truth, just because I say something. So my response has been from day one that I'll stop the instant you tell me one thing that I'm not telling you that's the truth. And if you're upset about me talking about the truth, what happened to me 35 years ago, but you're not paying attention to who I am today, then I'm not the person that has a problem. And if there is ownership and acceptance and any move towards the good at all, I will fully embrace my mom and say I love you and try to do my best to help and move forward because there's no reason to hold the grudges of the past. The past is the past and I cannot change it. I can only change the future. So I there's no reason not to, but I also cannot put myself in a situation where I engage with that toxicity anymore. I've given too much of my life and too much of my good to that negative to let that hurt me anymore. So if there's any of that,
sometimes is that sorry, I was gonna say the way I've described some of these toxic relationships. Sometimes it's like hugging a porcupine, where like you're trying to give love, but the more you hug, you're like, is this blood mine? Why am I bleeding? Let me just hug harder, and then it's just like it gets worse and worse.
Well, and the example that I always use is Mike, because my friend Mike, who I'm definitely going to talk about when we bring up my past, because he's the best, most positive portion of my early life. What he did for me wasn't just, oh, dude, you're a friend and I love you and you're going to be great and everything's going to be good. He was a friend who called me on my bullshit and did it without insulting me. He was the only friend that I ever had that when I was going through shit, he would call me on it and be like, dude, you need to drop this toxic shit. This is what's causing you this problem here. This right here, you're a good dude, but this is what pissed them off. This is what happened here. This is what's causing you. And like in real time, call me on my bullshit, but not in a way that, dude, you fuck you, get away from you, fuck you. There's never been a time. Well, I've known him. I met him when I was 12 years old and he was 10, and I'm turning 44 this year, so 42 years, 32 years been friends with this guy. Okay, never once in 32 years of friendship have we ever had a time where we said fuck you to each other. Not once. We've never had a fuck you asshole moment ever in our friendship. We've been able to have rational, reasonable discussions because he's the one friend that, even though he was calling me on my bullshit, and he would say, dude, I can't let you do this. I can't bring you in. No, today. You can't come and do this today because if this is the way you're going to be acting, you can't come over. No, you can't borrow $200 because you blew the $200 last week on what I gave you for other stuff. I'm not doing it again. He would have that line. And then afterwards say, do you want lunch? I'm going out. I'm going to go eat. Want to eat with me? Because I'm doing stuff. I got stuff to do today. You want to come spend time with me? Because it's not about, it's the sharing space is so powerful. Being seen and being heard is way more powerful than being glad-handed and being told you're going to be fine. It's just as dehumanizing to be looked at like a project than to be looked at like a threat. So if someone looks at you like you're a monster and you're broken, that you're not a person, you're just a threat. But if someone looks at you like just want to fix you, and there's a 12-step program they get you in, and you're just a checkbook or you're a mark on their checklist, that's just as depersonalizing. That's just as dehumanizing. And it's the humanity of it, the sharing the space. That, dude, Mike used to tell me constantly I was a good kid in a shit world. And that wasn't just a compliment telling me I was a good kid. That was, you're in a shit world and you can get out of it. You can climb out of this world. You don't have to stay here. You're a good kid in a shit world. Get yourself in a better world. He used to ask me when I was 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, what do you want to do, dude? You're going to be great at anything. Once you pick a direction and move, you're going to be fine. Just pick a direction and go. Because at the time I didn't have any future. I didn't think I had a future at all. I didn't look forward. If you'd asked me, what are you going to do what do you want to be in 10 years? I don't know what I want to be in next month. I don't know where I'm going to sleep tomorrow. Like 10 years, I'm dead. What do I want to be in 10 years?
Well, I would imagine if you come from such a chaotic environment, it's hard to plan ahead when you're just thinking, am I safe now? How about now? Am I safe now?
Yeah.
How about now? It's hard to see the future. And actually from that, let's use that jumping off point to go back.
Okay.
Because you said you're comfortable sharing all parts of you. And so let's start so we can really paint the picture of your childhood and how you got to that moment at 15 where that terrible thought popped into your mind. Let's start from the beginning.
Well, so the early beginning is my very first memory, opening memory of my life. The earliest thing I can ever remember is me laying on my bloody mom's body while I'm looking up at my father. Well, he has a cross-shaped tire iron in his hand, and I'm screaming at him, "You just killed my mom."
Jesus.
And that she wasn't dead, but she was beaten, bloody, and unconscious. And that's like a flashbulb memory that's the start of my life.
That's like the Dexter storyline.
I've never seen that show. I should watch that show. You're like the third person that told me that, actually.
Just don't watch the final season. Pretend it ends.
I've heard that too, yeah. So that's the early life. My father was a Vietnam vet. By the time I was born, he was a drug-addicted monster who was just a wife beater, basically a rapist, just evil monster. Not basically, flat-out rapist. And I have an older brother who's 2 years older. And my father was so vicious that we have the very first permanent restraining order that was ever issued in Colorado was issued on my father. And we would run from battered woman shelter to battered woman shelter to get away from him, and he would chase us down and track us down, and he was a hunting kind of guy. He would hunt us, and so we would think we would escape and then come to the house, and he'd be hiding underneath the kitchen table when we brought the groceries in, and he'd burst out, knock my mom down, rape her in front of me and my brother, and make us watch. Just vicious guy. So yeah, every kind of abuse imaginable from birth to 5. And then when my mom escaped him, I don't know how that process happened, because she sent me and my brother up to Oregon for a year to live with her family and my grandma and my grandpa and my uncle. And that was an escape for her and really toxic for us because that toxicity rolls downhill, and that's the mountain my toxic hill was rolling down. And it was my pedophile uncle, my he who raped and uh, abused a 4-year-old and the 4-year-old's mom in a pickup truck right outside my aunt's house while me and my brother were in the house. He never touched me and my brother because when he tried to, I beat him almost to death with a broomstick. Um, the My pedophilic great grandfather who raped like the whole generation above me, and so yeah, like it's that kind of that's where the monsters came from. And so they, after a year of that, they sent us back to Colorado, and my mom had gotten left my father, got with my stepdad, who I never called dad, I always called him Dave. And it went from extreme violence and beatings and rapes to crime and crack and stealing and robbing and lying and manipulation because Dave was a criminal. When I met him, he was actually I met him when he was in prison. When we got back from Colorado, he was in the process of serving out a 4-year sentence for strong arm robbery because they would hijack entire delivery trucks. So I met him at a halfway house and would see him on furlough. And so when he finally got all the way out, he continued that crime spree that he was on, and would go hijack entire delivery trucks of places to like Toys R Us or Kmart or anywhere like that, and take all the stuff in it and go sell it at the flea market. And so every now and then in my life, I have memories of like going to having like 30 cases of stainless steel scissors, and we're selling them at the flea market for some reason. Yeah,
What the
and
heck?
I don't know where that came from. And but then they would just take all the money and blow it on crack and coke, and but they didn't believe in hiding anything, so they would like do everything right in the middle of the living room. So they would pull out the cast iron skillet or the flat iron electric skillet and the vials, and just rock up the crack right in front of us.
And you're how old when this is happening?
Six, six, five, six.
What the hell?
Yeah. And so that kind of I actually right around that age, 6, 7, 8, I took crack to show and tell at school, at one of my many schools I went to.
Hold on. What?
Yeah, yeah, I took
Like
crack.
you're leaving in the morning and you're like, I'm just gonna take this thing that my parents use and take it to
Uh huh.
school and see what people say.
Yeah, yeah, it was show and tell.
How
Yeah.
did the teacher react?
She took it to the counseling office and they sent me home. And then a couple, like I think within the week we had moved. That was one of the times where we ended up moving from place to place. I went to like 40 different schools. Was constantly moving back and forth from Oregon to Colorado. With as soon as we get back to my stepdad, that started the nomadic period where we're just bouncing back and forth constantly. And usually hop into the back of a pickup truck and driving for 10 hours. So like not even a camper or nothing, just throw a plastic tarp over the back of a pickup truck and drive. And it was, yeah, it was, and we're
Chaos.
sitting in the back of the
Pure
pickup truck, and
chaos.
we're sitting in the back of the pickup truck. They're driving at like 90 miles an hour, high off their minds on coke, flying down the highway across Wyoming. Yeah, it's some scary times. And
Yeah.
getting evicted, and the different schools I go to have a bunch of different bullies, and like every different school I go to, I'm constantly the new kid. I never get any kind of sense of permanence anywhere I go, and at the same time I'm dirty and filthy and smelly and nasty. And there was a school, I thought it was in Oregon, but actually it was in Colorado because the girl who there's a story about it. One time I was walking to school and defecated in myself. I crapped my own pants and just kept on going to
Right.
walk to school. Went to school the whole day with crap filled pants. And
What?
the next day I just went to school, stayed in school all day long with crap filled pants. And the next day I showed up to school and there was a box of supplies for me. The teacher had a box of stuff. There was like a coat and pants and so school supplies and all this stuff. And I took it home to my family. I'm like, hey, check this out. Look at what I got. Yay. And that was one of the signals. Within a week, we were gone. That was one of we moved and bounced out because if that teacher's getting too close, that means social workers are getting too close. That means the people are getting investigated too much. That means they needed to go. So we kept on moving. And
Right. So I think we talked
um,
about this a little bit before the call because does it seem like those lessons taught you that anytime someone did something good for you, or anytime you accepted something that was good for you, then that was like the danger zone.
Yeah, yeah. Anytime trying to get help was very perilous. Like that taught me early on, actually, that trying to go out and trying to get help from any teacher or counselor was going to cause me to get could make my whole world blow up. Could make my
Right.
mom go to jail, my parents siblings go to foster care, could make everything blow up. So I stopped really trying to get help pretty early on because the going into counseling can be like walking into a room full of spikes that are pointed inside. Like you never know what you might say that could cause that jaw of death to snap shut. Because if like my home life is toxic in hell and my parents are lying manipulators who are insulting and crime and crack and violence. My internal monologue is nothing but hatred and violence and disgustingness, and I hate myself. And that, how can I be expected to go into a counseling office and not say anger, violence, and hatred, and
Right.
not say something that's going to cause a mandatory report that's going to cause everything to get slammed down? So why
And
even go to help?
do you find it difficult now to do things that are either good for you, or to show yourself that you love yourself because of these lessons, that anytime I did something good for myself, it would be like a danger zone from these people that are supposed to take care of me?
For the longest time, yes, but now, totally the opposite.
Okay.
Now, as I sit here today, I do the exact opposite. I take care of myself and smell every single flower. Every bit of good that I can get, I take it because I've spent too much of my life in the dark to not experience all the light that I can. So
That's great.
that's my attitude as I sit here today. But that's within the last 6 years. But
Because
yeah, so now
speaking of getting, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to go back to the story, but go ahead.
Because I was going to say, speaking of like therapists and getting help and things like that, I read something about you that I think it was in your teenage years that you saw a therapist or maybe a counselor at school. You can tell me which, and they said something like, "We can't help you," and refused you inpatient care. That
That was yeah,
paragraph
that's at
made me
the
so angry, and so I'd love to hear what
that's
happened and who this person was.
yeah, that's coming up. That's a big moment near the end. So that's coming.
Okay.
Um, so right now we're only at about 9, 10, 11 years old. Okay.
Okay.
So so that's when that really outwardly toxic, outwardly disgusting kind of phase comes in, where I'm starting to really be the dirty, nasty, smelly one and kind of adopt that like wrap that darkness around me like a blanket. Like everybody says I'm nasty and dirty. I feel like I'm worthless, so I'm going to be the worthless one. So now I'm going to wrap that darkness around me and start being toxic to everybody else. And I
Right.
go from being bullied by everybody to kind of being the bully to myself and everybody around. And at the same time, kind of short circuiting bullies when I see them by whenever I would go to the school, I would do, the thing you hear about when you go to prison and you go to when you first go to prison, you go to the biggest guy in jail and you go try to punch him, like establish yourself as a pecking order.
Right.
Like I would kind of do the reverse of that. Like I'd go find the most popular guy and go to him and make fun of myself to him. Like
Huh.
I would put myself immediately down in the bottom rung of the social ladder. Like to establish that this is where I belong, this is what I'm supposed to be. Like I would just to kind of short circuit. Let's get that process out of the way. I know you're going to pick on me. I know you're going to bully me. Let's just get to right here already. I'm there. Here we are. I'll make more fun of myself than you can. I have more fat jokes than you have. I have more insults for me than you do. Let's just get that out of the way. And that started right around 12, 13. That started to become my kind of defense mechanism. And
Okay.
then when I started, the the chaos at home really started to spin up, and the beatings and violence and crack and just constant chaos, constant. Come home and every day I would come home there'd be fighting. It was like living on that fight or flight response every minute of every day. Like you were talking about earlier, like every minute at any time someone could burst in the bedroom, throw a duffel bag at me, say, "We have 15 minutes to grab all your shit. We need to get out."
My God.
And that happened more than 4 times in my life. And that is, I would lose everything, completely lose all the stuff that I had because since my parents were criminals and they would steal stuff going to toy stores, occasionally in my life I would have a Christmas where I would have every He-Man toy, every Thundercats toy with all the play sets and all the things because they stole the whole play set from the fucking toy store. And so I'd have all the toys, but then they'd throw a duffel bag at me a couple of days later, say, we have 15 minutes, grab all your shit, we need to get out of here. The only thing I would ever take is my comic books. I would
Crucial.
grab all my comics and take them out. Yeah, that was crucial. That was my lifeline. Because for me, that was while there was the fighting and the drugs and all the beatings going on, I'd have my nose buried in X-Men. I'd be buried in Captain Marvel or Captain America, or like I'd be sucked into a Marvel comic. And I was mostly Marvel. I like DC. I read every comic, but Marvel comics was my jam. And the that was that became like even up until my teen years, because that bouncing back and forth continued up until 16, 17 years old. And I would always have crates of comics with me. And I even when we get evicted someplace, I'd walk my crates down to Mike's house and set them down, and then we go move. And I could always go pick them back up from Mike's house. And so,
I want to stay on comics for a second because
yep.
I know what a fan you are, and I'm a gigantic fan as well. I really got into when Superman died, and I was at a craft show with my mom, and I was like maybe 14, 15, and I saw the black bag and the white bag as Superman had died and come back to life. And I'm an atheist now, but I was raised Catholic, so this idea of like black bag, white bag, resurrection was like super appealing. And I read comics for 2 years or whatever until he came back. And now I'm more of a Marvel fan, and I've read a lot of like graphic novels on both sides. But it bothers me when people look at these movies and they dismiss them as being like just like, oh, just a popcorn film or a big this or or kind of empty. And I don't think these people understand how important comics are to the kids that read them growing up, like how they get lost in there, how they want to be more than who they are growing up, how they want to do good, how they want to save people because maybe they want to save themselves.
And how much comics teach children. I think that
Yes.
the two things I learned from the most as a kid, three, I'm going to include three, were comic books, Sesame Street, and Mr. Rogers. Because those are the three things when you're a kid that don't talk to you like you're a kid. When you're reading
Yes.
X-Men comics don't talk down to you like you're five. X-Men comics taught me words like telekinesis and taught me words like prehensile and those kinds of like that kind of really deep because the writers really use science. They really use psychology. Like the writers
Right.
know what they're talking about. They don't make up gobbledygook and throw the gobbledygook in there, which DC did a lot. And that's why I wasn't really into DC, because DC did a lot of the Krypton powers, and I don't care about that. I don't care about kryptonium. I care about the actual like radioactivity and like, even though gamma rays weren't real, they made me look up what are real gamma rays. If you really put gamma rays into something, could you really make a Hulk? No, you make a tumor. But
Right.
still, what's the difference there? And so like that kind of, and then the characters always, for me, I could easily identify with them because they were always, in Marvel in particular, was always like characters with feet of clay, humans. That wasn't the, Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but he was Peter Parker first. Peter Parker put on the costume and everybody called him Spider-Man. But even while he was Spider-Man, he was Peter. And his
Right.
real friends would still call him Peter, even when he was in his mask. And that kind of like Nightcrawler and Archangel, the two X-Men I really connected with the most, and Cyclops. I was like Cyclops too, but X-Men was my big one. I was a huge X-Men fan, and those characters like Nightcrawler looks like a demon, but he's really a swashbuckling romanticist and really likes the Errol Flynn movies, but has a tail and disappears in a puff of smoke. And like Archangel,
Right.
the sweet guy that gets his wings cut off and now he has to fight against his own power to get himself to contain his own evilness. And like
Wow, you know what? Let me get into that because those two things that you described, I think those two things are, and I'll get into this later. It's what we do to men.
hmm
We teach men that they have to be these like dark, brooding people with these, and then they'll cut off our wings, which are a
well,
lot of our emotions and our softness and
and even so, on that example, take the most manly example in Marvel Comics, Wolverine. Okay, if you're not a comics fan, you think Wolverine is, I got claws, I'm gonna kill you, I got a cigar, yeah, bub, I'm gonna get you. If you're a comics fan, you realize that Wolverine has mentored multiple young girls and is like the dad of the X-Men, where he's been like Wolverine with Jubilee. He's going to tell Jubilee, no, you need to treat yourself nice. You need to be good. You need to stay on the path because you need to knock off that crap and be good. Like
Right.
he's not out there causing trouble. He's the one who's keeping him in line. Like to
Right.
the point where he even ran the school. Like it's a different conception. Again, if from the outside looking in, the people who read it, then where it's a lifeline because it really is for a lot of kids, and
Yeah.
you see
Because that's
yourself
kind of,
and
I was gonna say
yeah.
that's kind of the revolution I'd like to start for men. That like you can be Wolverine and you can be these manly things if you want to be, but you can also
Mm-hmm.
have all of your emotions and your
Yeah.
softness, and you can love your guy friends the same that you love your female friends, and you can like
Mm-hmm.
you can do all of these things, and like you don't have to be this idea of what the traditional
Yeah.
masculine man is. It's breaking a lot of men. It's already shown and proven that like men who subscribe to these more traditional masculine roles all have worse mental health outcomes, higher
Mm-hmm.
suicide rates, like all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I want to chat with you, because I think part of your message here is that like like the way men feel and what we're doing to boys and children is that like we're surrounding them in violence and not letting them be who they are, which is these delicate, sometimes fragile people. But we could be all those things and also be
Mm-hmm.
strong. We can be
Yes.
both sides.
Yes, yes, and Wolverine I think is a great example of that because Wolverine will also wear a dress with his daughter. Like Wolverine, I've seen the comics where he's with Akihiro, or what's her name? He has a Japanese daughter. I can't remember her name right off the top of my head.
Right. I don't remember that.
But when there was the comic back in the, and these are back in the, not new. Like these aren't woke. These are from the 70s and 80s where
Right.
he's actually like he's hanging out and loving Jean, going out to the opera, and like these kind of things you can do. Like Colossus, the big metal muscle bound metal guy, looks like he's super tough. He's a romantic painter. He's a writer. Like everybody has that kind of soft side to him,
Definitely.
and and I think the real manly thing is to be able to connect fully with your emotions, to be able to express yourself fully without fear of judgment from anybody. Because if you're trying to act like a manly tough guy and trying to be all buff and tough because it's to make your friends look cool, then you're not cool. You're just a follower like everybody else. You might as well throw on some spikes and some black leather and call yourself a goth because you're fitting into a group the exact same way. All you're
Right.
doing is fitting into your clique. The real manly men, the men who grow up to be good fathers and grow up to be good husbands, are the ones who can fully express themselves, can sit with their daughters and laugh at a cartoon and cry at the show with their wife and
Yeah, hold on,
enjoy,
but also sit with their sons. Like
sit
there's
with
a
their
lot of
sons,
research.
sit
There's a
with
lot of
their
research,
sons.
unfortunately, that says that like people will treat little boys a lot
Mm-hmm.
harsher than girls for the exact same scenarios. Like men that can
Yeah.
cry with their sons and show them that they can be all those things, I think is super powerful right now. Because
And
I would say like, go
sons that
ahead.
can cry with their fathers get so much strength, so much strength.
Yeah.
For the son to be able to express themselves emotionally with their father and see that it's okay, that the father feels these emotions too, that it's all right to have these feelings because these feelings don't make you broken, they make you a man. This is what makes you really a human, to be able to love somebody fully, including yourself, to be able to love yourself all the way.
Yeah.
Because that's a concept that I find that a lot of men don't have ingrained in them, is the concept of being able to actually love yourself, to be able to do the things that you really enjoy because you really enjoy them,
Right. Well,
not because.
I would say that's because how we raise boys. Because how we raise
Hmm.
boys is we don't let them have any of their softness and their love and their
Hmm.
sadness or weakness, any of those things. So I think we teach boys from a very old a young age. It's shown at like 3 or 4. We really start doing this gender enforcement sort of things in
Hmm.
society and within family. So anytime a boy tries to emote and do something that he likes, and maybe it's too feminine, be careful, maybe he's gay or
Yep.
maybe this and that,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden you do that over time, and what we're teaching boys is that like you can't be yourself. You have to be
Well,
what
and
we tell you to be.
on the gender identity thing, to me, that's always been a really weird kind of argument. The whole argument in general, because I call you Michael because you told me your name is Michael. But if in a half an hour you just told me your name was actually Tom, I'd call you Tom because I don't have any proof either way, and there isn't any reason why I can't call you Tom. And then if later on you wanted to call you Nancy, I'd call you Nancy because why not? It's your name. I don't have any proof either way. What's the point? And
Right.
so to me, self-identity is self-identity. Like I get to pick who I am. You get to pick who you are. And then when we interact, we say, this is who I am and this is who you are. Okay, we get to interact that way. There's no rule book that says that the person I'm interacting with has to be that person all the time.
Sure.
Like,
Well,
y-
and even though I would agree with all of that, 100% of it, I think that's even on the far end of the conversation of boys and men. I think
mhm,
all of that is obviously super important also, but I think just the way, because I think even let's say we're talking about just heterosexual boys, boys that aren't on the,
mhm,
I would say, on the
on the
sexuality
spectrum.
spectrum.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but like, but you can be a jock and do all these things, but you can also cry at a movie. You can
Totally.
you can be affected by something, and unfortunately, I think there's this still like fear of the homosexual, or fear of
I
or,
I
or
think
fear of your son not being manly enough that is
mhm,
creating a lot
and
of.
that right there, I think the concept of be a man and stiff upper lip have caused us to disconnect from those emotions in a way that
For
is
sure.
toxic to the men. Not that is the real toxic masculinity. It's not being toxic to everybody else. It's being toxic to the men themselves. It's
Hmm.
that we have repressed over generations. We've repressed men's feelings in a way that has caused it to be almost a xenophobic reaction to expressing them. Like it's
Yeah.
almost like dealing with a cockroach in your house. Like you don't want to touch it because it's scary, because it's new, and you don't really want to deal with it. But the most cathartic thing is, I have had the honor of after I get on stage and do my presentation, and then I get off, I do a Q&A afterwards. And I have had Marines, full giant buff Andrew Tate listening Marines, come up and hug me and cry afterwards and tell me that they can finally have some kind of emotion they never thought they could have, and they really want to be able to connect with it again.
Wow.
And to to me, the real manly person is the one that can stand in front of anybody's judgment and express all of who they are, all of it, the fullness of me. I got in front of the entire world and cried, and I'm fine with doing it again because I don't care about people's judgment of me. I am very happy with who I am. I'm very pleased with who I am inside, pleased with who I am outside. I have a good life, a good wife, a good family. I'm a good father, a good husband, and I'm a good person. And so I don't require outside validation to show me that I am that. So, but that validation also, I don't require outside judgment to tell me if I'm bad. So if someone wants to laugh at me because I'm crying, okay, that's fine. I'm going to keep being me because I'm comfortable with being me and I'm fine with that. And to me, that is the real height of what I think I want to aspire to as being a man, is being fully confident and comfortable being who I am and being in my skin at all times. Whether that's the tough me, that because I can turn on the toughness. I'm a big tough guy. I spent a long time as an angry dude. I can be that angry person if I want to, but it's not all of me. Just like the sensitive side isn't all of me. Just because I
Right.
cry at a song doesn't mean I'm blubbering every minute of every day. No, it's an emotional part of me, and I'm fine with adapting it and fine with owning it. And it's it is a great these facets, all these different portions of me that make me the man I am, are all good portions of me, even the bad portions of me, because they've
Right.
made me who I am.
The
And
way I look at it is about emotional adaptability. That I
mhm,
think if you cannot be emotionally adaptive, I think it makes you more brittle. So all those men that would say, or people in general, if you say like, oh no, I'm strong, I can take more of this. I don't need a sick day. I don't need this if I'm going through a grief. Let's say I lost a parent or someone in my life. I can do that. Like I don't think that's emotionally adaptive. I think that's putting pressure on yourself and pain that you don't need to continue to pile on. But if you can
mhm,
accept that, like, I'm feeling incredible loss, I'm feeling incredibly whatever, I think you can be adaptable in different scenarios. If you need to be tough, like you said, and protect someone, or fight for something that you believe in, you can do those things. But then you can also experience loss and sadness and all these things. And I
mhm,
think it makes all of us more powerful.
mhm. And making a smile and a hug equal to a fist in someone's mind is important. because sometimes the fist is more important. And a lot of times for men, the fist becomes more important as you grow up. You want to be strong, you want to be tough, you want to prove. And that's
Right.
why I always say it's an important part that I've added to it. That give love to the ones you feel deserve it the least because they need it the most. Sometimes that person is yourself.
Yeah, sure. That makes
Because
a lot of
like
sense. Like
so, go ahead.
I was gonna say I wanted to just dive back into the chronology because you were getting to the
Yeah,
point
that's where
about
I was going to go to.
about when you spoke to the psychologist.
Yep. So now we're getting to be about 13, 14 years old, and the chaos at home is extremely bad. The violence, the drugs, the everything is really, really bad. So I'm starting to be homeless a large portion of the time
Oh,
because I just can't take it anymore at home. I'm starting to sleep on the streets, starting to go into friends' houses and burn out resources, and staying at this friend on the couch, staying at that friend on the couch, just bouncing around till people get sick of me because I'm also filthy and nasty and smell really bad. And so there's an important figure at this point to bring into the story. So when I was 12 years old at a comic shop, I met this kid named Mike, and we were playing video games. We actually played the original Mortal Kombat 1. That's the game we were playing in the arcade. So we were sitting there playing, and we bonded immediately over comic books and deep conversation. I went to his house that afternoon, pretty much never left for a week. We just immediately hooked up, became instant best friends. And whenever I was in Denver, his place was like my home base. Like I would always go back to his house because he never moved. So I memorized his phone number, and like he was like the one stable portion. And right around 13, 14 years old, I started kind of living three different lives where I had a brief respite of a life at Mike's house where for a couple hours a day, if he was able to go there, have a little bit of normalcy and a little bit of actual life. Then, because I couldn't stay there, then I would go to the chaos at my mom's house to like grab clothes, recharge, get whatever I needed to out of there really quick because I definitely wasn't going to stay there because that was just violence and pain. But all my stuff was there. All my stuff was there. So I would have to go back there occasionally and like change clothes. And which I only did once every month or so. And then I would spend most of my time over at what I call this disaster groupie friends, where I had a group of friends that I had that one of my friends' dads paid for the rent. His dad bought all the food, but his dad didn't live there. So it turned into like a kid's party house. Okay. So these kids in this house, it kind of turned into a bunch of kids navigating depression without adult supervision. And I was the most extreme example of that in there. There was one or two others that were close to what I was going through, but I was the most extreme. And so they would kind of like push us into the dark to see how far we would go, just push us off the edge. And so instead of talking about girls or sports or movies, we talk about killing people. We talk about, so if you're going to shoot up a school, what would you do? If you're going to kill 10 people,
God,
what would you do?
how old are you at this
And
time?
14, 15.
Right.
And so that was just the fiction of the group. We would just talk about it for hours. So it was like just like almost like
Hours.
violence D&D. Oh yeah, we would just sit there
Right.
and go through whole plans, and it would just like the conversation topics. And it wasn't constant, but it was pretty frequent that we would have that. And so that house though ended because we're having one night, we're actually having a party. It was somebody's birthday, and mind you, this is a teenage flop house, so a bunch of kids from the high school are there, and a couple of the kids were in a band together and said, but they brought their band, so there was a band playing. There was like 30 kids at this big birthday party, and like 14 of them, I had got a bunch of LSD, and from my manager, I had a small job with a blackjack pizza down the street, and because I needed some kind of form of money, and so got a day job working there. And with one of my first paychecks, bought a bunch of LSD, and so it's like 14 kids tripping acid at this party, and the parents show up, and of course that means party ends. Everybody goes home, and the house gets evaporated. I no longer have a place to stay, and everybody else gets to go back to their houses, and I get to go stay in the field behind Casa Bonita because I am now out of places to be. I have burned through all of my supports. I have burned through all of my different areas. And Casa Bonita is this big Mexican restaurant here in Denver. There's actually an episode of South Park they made about it. It's a big pink Mexican restaurant with cliff divers and shit. And the episode's actually accurate. That's really how the place was. The South Park people own the restaurant now. It's weird. Um, but right behind that restaurant back in the day, there was a field, and it was a safe place for me because in the field was like a dip where you couldn't see it from the street.
Okay.
So if I was sleeping there, nobody thought there was a body in the field or anything, which happened to me at a couple other places where all of a sudden someone tried to wake me up thinking I was dead sleeping in the field. And so, yeah, that was quite the experience. So now I'm alone and I'm in the field, and my self harm has gotten really bad. I had started taking to cutting myself when I was about 13 years old, and it started as a like emotional regulatory thing. Like I felt like I was living in this giant tsunami, like just sloshing back and forth. Like my life was a mosh pit and just kind of bouncing back and forth. And if you ever been to a concert, the heavy metal concert, there's a mosh pit, and then there's the couple spaces before the mosh pit, right between the stage and the pit, where it's like the sardine can where you can't really move. Everything's so pushed up together. And in that spot, and I know this from experience, and if you're in a really big heavy metal show, if you pick your feet up off the ground, you're so packed in tight that you literally can just like vertically crowd surf. You can just kind of like float in the crowd, and you don't really have to you don't walk at all. You just literally pick up all the way off the ground and like fly through the crowd. And I would do that, and that's how my life would feel at the time. Like I'm just kind of surfing through this giant pit, and I don't really have any control over anything. And everywhere I go, there's just slamming into violence, and I'm just pushing back and forth. But when I cut myself, it was real, and it was mine. And even though it was destructive, and even though it hurt, and even though it was bloody, it was real. And it was like it calmed down the waves for just a little bit. And so it started as that, but then it started to get worse and worse and worse. And the abuse at home didn't help at all. There was one really bad time I was home. Nobody knew I had came home. I was upstairs in my bedroom. I was grabbing some stuff, but I was talking to a girl. I just got done talking to her, I think, and I'm sitting on my bed and I'm cutting my arm, and I'm cutting it pretty bad. And my mom walks past and laughs, like literally laughs at me, like starts chuckling, like, "Oh, you're just fucking doing that again, whatever." And she walks out and starts going down the stairs. Okay, now staircase is on one side of the room, couch is on the other side, facing the staircase because the TV is next to the staircase. So she comes down, sits on the couch. I come down, stand on the staircase. I look at her, said, "You think this is a fucking joke?" And I hold up my arm when I got a big box cutter razor blade. I start hacking at my arm really hard. It's hacking really bad. Then big cuts open up in my arm. And I just go upstairs, wrap a t-shirt around my arm, and sit on my bed, start playing video games. She never even came up to check. Never even came up to see what I was doing. And so that was just one example of it, just kind of spun it into the dark. And then so after I'm in this field, and the self-harm was really, really bad, and it was cold. So one thing about Mike is that if it got really, really bad and I didn't have anywhere else to be, I could occasionally go stay in his tool shed because his parents had put a giant recliner chair in there as storage. And I would go in there and sleep in the recliner chair. And it was like dirty and nasty, but it was a chair, it had a roof, even though the roof had whole gaps in it because it was like wood slats, so those gaps and you could see the stars. Right. And I'm in that shed, and I'm cutting myself so bad that there's a pool of blood forming on the ground underneath me. And I'm like, I got to get some help or I'm going to die. If I don't get some help, I'm going to die. And so social services had tried to intervene in my life a couple times. And so I figured I'm going to call social services. I'm going to call them on myself. Maybe they can help. And so that morning at dawn, I knocked on Mike's back door and borrowed a phone book and bus fare from his mom. And I called social services on myself for that afternoon. And it was dawn when I called, and it was like 3 or 4 in the afternoon when I got there. And during the intervening hours, they'd also contacted my mom, and they brought her in. And so we sit around this table, and it's a big round table, and there's 3 or 4 counselors at one end, 3 or 4 counselors, or me and my mom at the other end. And they're like, "So what are we here for? What's our problem? What's the deal?" So I pull out a square box cutter razor blade covered in blood, throw it on the table. So that's what I'm here for. I feel like I'm nothing. I feel like I'm worthless. Pick up my arm, show them fresh cuts that were there. I'm like, this is why. I feel like I have nothing left in this world. And my mom, who was the most practiced liar I've ever known, she got them to believe that I'm just making it all up. I'm just doing it for attention. I just do it to get a rise out of people, and I'll be okay, and she can handle it. And they sent me home with her.
What?
And yeah, and we got 2 or 3 blocks from the social services office. And she turns to me and she snarls with this mean look on her face. Says, next time you do a better job, I'm gonna buy you the fucking razor blades. And like, okay, you think I'm a monster? I'll show you what a monster is now. And that darkness I was staring at, I just dove all the way into it. So for the next 9 months, I went on what I call scorched earth. Okay, so for 9 months after that, I went on a solid campaign of personal societal destruction. Of if you liked me, I was going to offend you. Whatever that was that I could offend you with, I was going to do that. It was like conscious. Like I would figure out what you liked, figure out how to break our relationship, and do that. And I did that with everybody close to me. And in that process, I even went to every family member I could, charmed my way in, got into every picture album I could possibly get into, gathered every picture of me and got them in a pile and burned them. I was trying to annihilate my past. So currently there's maybe 5 or 6 pictures that exist of me before the age of 16.
Wow.
And so I would, if after 9 months of that, of solid social devastation, of offending and being mean and vicious to everybody I'm around and trying to destroy every bit of support I possibly have, I am now completely alone. I even ruined my relationship with Mike, or I thought, because I had stolen a bunch of 2 long boxes worth of his comics, took it to a comic shop and sold them. And
Whoa.
yeah, I was trying to break our relationship. And so after 9 months of that, I'm now completely alone and I'm in the field behind Casa Bonita. And I hadn't changed my clothes in months, hadn't taken my shoes off in months, but I also wasn't wearing socks. My feet were literally rotting off of my body. I was surviving by stealing food and free samples from the Albertsons at the top of but next to Casa Bonita, and trying to avoid police during the daytime. I was just absolutely at the bottom. And I woke up one morning in the snow, and it was like 2 inches of snow on the ground. And the 2 block walk to get up from the field to the grocery store, I wasn't just shaking, I was seizing. I was like, I can't breathe. My arms are twitching. I can't barely move. I barely could make it up there. And I get into the bathroom to kind of wash my face off. I look in the mirror and I'm like, I got to do something or I'm going to die. This is the bottom. If I don't get help, I'm going to die. And across the street from the school that I was nominally at, had to be at North because if you weren't on school campus, the truancy officers would arrest you. But I never actually attended school. Only classes I ever attended were choir class and English class. So afterwards, if you ask me about that, I'll tell you why. But so across the street from that, there was a building that said mental health. And I didn't know what it was for. I didn't know what it was about. I just knew it said mental health. And I knew that last time when I warned them I was coming, they brought my mom in. I'm not doing that shit again. So this time I'm just going to go in cold. So I went in and I tried to get some help. And they had me meet with this young lady. She was in her early 20s. And I don't really remember much about that conversation, because all I remember is the very end when she said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. I can't help you. And when I walked out of that door, that moment is when I felt my brain break. I felt my brain snap like a mirror, like literally felt like shards of glass. And right one after another, a couple things instantly happened. It was like bang, 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 immediate effects. The first was I found out what was at the bottom of that giant tsunami. When you're at the bottom of all of that mosh pit, it gets really quiet and it gets really still because there's nothing left to lose. There's no more down. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to cut my arm off? Okay, I'm going to die. You put me in jail? They'll feed me. Like, I don't have any more down. And so right then, the plans crystallized right in my head. I knew what I was going to do because I had talked it through with the disaster group of friends. I had already talked through the plans. I was either going to go into the school food court or the mall food court. Like, I had already walked through the details of what I was going to do. And I knew where to get a gun because this was mid-90s. This was Boys in the Hood era. So gangs were a big thing. And this was before the age of metal detectors. So kids would routinely bring in pistols and flash them in school and stuff. Like, it was just a thing. Wow. And yeah, the mid-90s were a crazy time. And there was a bunch of gangbangers that bought and sold drugs from my family. that would hang out next to the ROTC building at the end of the school. It was right actually next to the entry doors I was planning on going into. And they knew me, they knew my family, and I went up to him like, hey dude, can you give me a gun, hopefully one that shoots a lot of bullets? Like, yeah, dude, give me an ounce of weed. Okay. That was easy enough to do because I went to my mom's house, grabbed an ounce out of the druggie's fucking pants sleeping on her floor. One of my brother's friends, he had 3 of them bagged up, grabbed an ounce out of his pocket, took it to him, and gave it to him. Here you go. He's like, all right, give me 3 days. I'll get that for you. Okay. And that all happened in one afternoon. Like I went to him, went home, grabbed it, came back. Here you go. And so it was like, give me 3 days. I'll get that for you. I'm like, okay, cool. And so in 3 days' time, I was planning on getting a gun. And I was pretty sure I was going to get it. The dude wasn't going to flake out. He was a student. Like he wasn't some rando I met off the street. Like,
Right.
In that time frame, I didn't think about it then, but looking back, I think I was saying goodbye. I was going to people in a much calmer way. And like, I went to my ex-girlfriend and told her, thank you for letting me sleep outside your gravel outside your window. And I was going to friends' houses and just saying thanks for keeping me alive. And at the end of that, I went to Mike's house and I knocked on his door. And when I knocked on his door and he opened it, I was in tears. And he brought me in and he sat me.
No problem.
He brought me in, sat me down, gave me some food, um, and he treated me like I was a person when I felt absolutely inhuman. And it wasn't hanging out with a buddy that saved my life. It was that when I knocked on his door, I didn't just feel invisible. I felt erased. I felt gone. I felt
Right.
like I was just a walking void that was about ready to explode. And that was it. And I was just trying to close off my life, write the thank you notes in the bottom last chapter of my book, close the lid, and be done. And so he brought me in, and it was like putting the tiny bits of me back on the bottom shelf of my life. And it was like I was able to take a breath, and like the waves receded a bit, and it really it helped kind of reestablish my connection with me. And so yeah, that I didn't leave his house for a week. I never went and got the gun, and he's still my best friend today.
Did that dealer have the gun?
I never went and contacted him again. I never went and contacted
Right.
him again. One of the things that I never went back to North. The that one of the things that happened after that was a frame shift. Like Mike was able to kind of get me into a different area and a different living situation, and it just for a little bit of time kind of give me a bit of a breath. I went and stayed with one of his friends for a bit, and it was just kind of just like take a breath. And so I just never went back to North. I just ended up by that point I was off, and we kept on moving, and I was done.
And your plan was just essentially just to get that gun and just it would be
Yeah.
suicide by cop and just
So
walk in and try to
well,
hit as many people as possible.
yeah, and it's important to note that neither one of those places were soft targets. Both places were the school had uniformed armed police officers stationed at all times at the door, and the mall literally had a police station a couple doors down from the food court. So that was factored into my plan. I was going to kill as many people as I could and die by suicide by cop. But the real goal of the attack wasn't that. That was the damage that I was going to cause. The target of the attack was my parents. I wanted to make my parents deal with making me. I wanted to have them deal with creating a monster. Because they had never had to deal with any ramifications for anything ever. I wanted to have them have to deal with the effects of dealing with me. And so I wasn't going to hurt them physically. I was going to hurt everything else and make them deal with that.
And going through all of the story because
Well, hold on. There's an important bit. I'll close off because this is the last bit of that past story. So this is an important section of it though. So now that was at 15, 16. Fast forward about 3 years. Okay. Now shortly thereafter, after that whole bit, the depression shifted inward. It went from outwardly where being, excuse me, I got hiccups. outwardly being aggressive towards anybody else and trying to be violent, to being more remorseful and depressed about the fact that I had planned it, and just kind of it was more inward. But the setting my feet down was a real effect, and so that rolling the clock back was real. So it took a couple of years for that to build back up. Took a while for that depression to spin back up, but when it did, it was more inward. I was suicidal, and so the night of my 19th birthday, I was planning on killing myself. I was going to commit suicide, and I was going to do it by drug overdose. I was going to get a whole lot of drugs. I had bought a bunch of LSD off the streets. I had gotten a gigantic baggie of Coke from my mom and a bunch of pills from my mom. I stole them both, and way more drugs than were needed to do the job, like copious amounts of narcotics. And I was planning on going the night of my 19th birthday, going to that field, and taking all those drugs and killing myself. But the day of my 19th birthday, I was trying to act like nothing happened. I was trying to act like nothing was wrong. And so I wanted to have as good a day as possible. And so in that day, I went to Mike's house. Okay. And I was trying to, I had interventions in the past. I didn't want anybody to stop me from anything. So I was trying to be as normal as I could. And so I went to Mike's house and just having a day. Now, Mike is a very social person. He has a friend group of his own. And one of his friends is a girl named Amber. Okay. And we would occasionally go over to Amber's house and listen to music, watch a movie, hang out. She's a very friendly person. She was always super nice to me. We never had an issue at all, but she was definitely his friend. But he was like, hey, today we're going to kick it at Amber's today. Right on. That's a great last day. Go spend it with two of my favorite people, go listen to some good music, and then at the end of the day, go kill myself. And so I get there, and that wasn't actually what happened at all. I got there, and I walked into a surprise birthday party for me. I walked into about 14 people saying happy birthday, and Amber had a blueberry peach pie, and I walked past him. I dropped all my drugs in the toilet, and that was the last time in my life I ever tried to kill myself. And Amber's also one of my best friends to this day. And here's the kicker to that story. Here's the real powerful bit of that story. When we left Mike's house, there was no birthday party for me. He called ahead to Amber's. He's like, hey, I'm bringing Aaron over. This is his birthday, by the way. And she's like, oh, yeah? It's his birthday? Let's do something for him. And she had already had a group of friends over. They had already baked a blueberry peach pie. So they're a bunch of artist friends. So they made a bunch of decorations really quick and threw up a really quick Aaron, happy birthday Aaron decorations thing. So I walked in to a fundamentally life-changing experience that changed me to my core, that she put up in 5 minutes because her friend was having a birthday.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's still one of my best friends to this day. I just went and saw a concert with her and my son not 3-4 months ago. We went and saw Pussifer.
Wow, I heard the peach pie story on another podcast. I didn't know it was a surprise party. And
Yeah.
so I'm getting a little emotional as well, because like I don't know. I think surprise parties are some of the are just so profound, because I think a lot of times it's hard for us to understand how many people love us and care about us, and that the world can be a great place. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I was like 22, and like I definitely wasn't anywhere near where you were. Like my life was fine, but one of my best friends forgot my birthday, and so 2 weeks afterwards, through a roundabout way, he got me to come over to his parents' house, and he had organized this giant surprise party in like the middle of August, which is like a month after my birthday. And I was just so surprised, and it was months. It was like 2 or 3 months later, I was still feeling this feeling of like of love, of acceptance, and these are people that I was already friends with, people that I knew liked me, people
Mm-hmm.
that I knew wanted to have me around, like. And so like just hearing that you had that experience on such a awful day, like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Fundamentally changed me to my core. To me, absolutely fundamentally shifted my whole world that day. That day was the start of my actual recovery. From that day forward, my life was different. And she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't even know it was that important of a day till I came out with my story in 2018. She didn't know how much she meant to me. That's how much that one little bit of human kindness can actually change someone's life. Because it literally took her 5 minutes. They had a bunch of artist friends. Took them no effort at all to draw up a couple things, say happy birthday, Aaron,
Right.
tack it up. They were already probably drawing shit because they're artists, and so it literally didn't take them any effort. But for me, it saved my life. Completely saved my life. Because if that hadn't,
I don't think we
if I had gone a
tell
different path
people.
that
Go ahead.
day, if I had gone a different path that day, if we had gone that day and let's say I walked into her, let's say we didn't even go to Amber's house. Let's say that I just went to Mike's house and he was dismissive, or even that I didn't go to Mike's house. Let's say that I didn't decide to do that day and I decided to just go off on my own. Now I'm alone and I think that nobody loves me. I think that nobody wants to see me at all. I think that I'm the completely worthless bit that I am, and I'm in that field, and that's the last bit of my existence.
That's devastating. I don't think we tell the people around us that we appreciate them enough, and that we
Yeah,
and that we, because I don't think we mean to take our loved ones for granted. I think we
I don't
just,
think so either.
life
But
is too
that's,
busy and life is
hmm
can be kind of shitty, and I think we're so
but I'll
focused
tell
on
you what,
ourselves sometimes it's hard.
I'll tell you what though, sitting here today as a father of four, I have four happy, healthy children and a beautiful wife. And I use my upbringing, what happened with me, as an exact example of how to parent them. I just do the opposite. I tell them I love them so much it's annoying. Every single conversation it's an I love you. I'm at every show. I'm at every concert. I routinely come home to herds of teenagers in my house that I might know two or three of them, and that's perfectly fine. Like I am the exact opposite of what happened with me because there's the only way to stop that trauma boulder from rolling downhill is to see it and catch it and throw it off the hill.
Right. So if anyone listening, this is a huge pitch to just throw surprise parties for everyone in your life.
It really absolutely
That
is. No, honestly,
yeah.
that's not a bad
I've
pitch.
thrown one for like at least two girlfriends, my mom,
All right.
another friend of mine. Like
So that deserves
love I go
that
ahead.
deserves an even better story. You're going to really like this one. Okay. So I gave a presentation a couple months ago at a really giant governmental function for some really high-ranking governmental officials, and one of them, I gave my presentation, and afterwards I do a Q&A. Okay. And the Q&A starts with this one lady who stands up. And mind you, this is a room full of people with acronyms and titles and badges longer than I have an arm. Okay, these are people that are professional and run every law enforcement thing you could think of. All right. And so this lady stands up and she says, I don't have a question. I just have a story to tell you. She says, a year ago, we had this suspect, and he was very violent and he had committed some really terrible things. And he was at a pivot moment. We knew that if we threw the book at him, we put him in prison, he's going to reoffend in prison. He's going to be in prison for the rest of his life, and he's going to just be that another statistic. But he's at a chance. And if we get him into this treatment program, we get him into this certain thing, then maybe we can divert him and we can keep him out of prison. Maybe he can actually save his life at this last moment, and we can get him. But we don't know how to reach him. Okay, we don't know how to get to him. And they were really struggling with how to reach this guy. Okay, and so they came upon my story. And then they watched my TED Talk and they heard me talk about the story with the blueberry peach pie in one of my interviews I did. So they came up with the idea that they went to this guy and they got a brownie and a candle. They put the candle in the brownie and they came to the dude on a random day and they gave him an I'm happy you're here party. Just I'm happy you exist party. Okay. No special date involved, no special occasion, just a here's a party because we're happy you're alive. All right. Now you fast forward a year. That guy not only completed his treatment plan, but he helps lead the treatment plan for everybody else, and it tells them all the time that that brownie saved his life. So yes, throw surprise parties.
Well, yeah, you cemented that. I think. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that to me is not only one of the best compliments I've ever received, but just shows you what the impact. All I do, I'm a regular guy. I work at a gas station. All I do is talk about what happened to me when I was a kid. I don't make up any stories. I don't create anything. I talk about the real pain I went through and the real life that I have. That's all I do. And somehow that connects and helps other people. Imagine what will help somebody who's afraid of talking. Imagine what will help if that person talks and that person comes against it. Because for me, I have a special ability with it where I'm not afraid of talking. All those years of insulting myself and making fun of myself and putting myself out, I burned out the ability to get embarrassed, ashamed about anything. I just don't have it. I don't have stage
Right.
fright. I get up on stage in front of thousands of people with no net. I don't get stage fright at all. I just don't get it. And but imagine what if you do, if you're afraid of talking, what could happen? Because if this is what happens when I talk, it blows me away what could happen if someone else does.
Right. Yeah, I think it's like we started this like just shining light on this darkness. Everyone can understand it. Like
Hmm.
even people obviously can't fully understand the life that you live and through all that horror
And,
with your parents, but
and
we
I would just
can
like to
relate it to
illustrate
something in our life.
And I would just like to illustrate something that happened in our conversation that I would like to point out that happens to me all the time. And I mentioned that it happened all the time and earlier in the conversation, and it actually happened in our conversation. So I tell my story of pain, and the initial response is that also happened with me. Here's a story of where my life got changed too. Here's everything too. I'm in tears, and here's my story that I went through as well. And you didn't mean to tell me the story about your surprise party. That just came up because it's natural in the conversation. Because that's what happens with this. Those barriers that we have and the things that we have that we think, people have a natural tendency to not actually listen. Usually when someone's listening, you're really preparing your next monologue. You're not actually listening to somebody, okay? And I think one of the things that this does, what I do, is it makes people listen because it connects them to themselves. And the ones that listen to you might not be me. Maybe you're listening to yourself. Maybe you're listening to your own memory of what happened to you in your own life. And that is profound because the more we can listen to our own pain, the more we can express it. And that we were earlier, to tie into our earlier discussion about manliness. That is, to me, the highest form of manliness. To be able to connect with your own personal emotions on the scene, in the moment, and be able to experience them in real time and live that moment and relive that moment in your head and see the feeling that you had and see why it connected with you. To me, that is what manliness really is. It's not be the tough guy and puff out your chest to everybody. That's a cartoon.
Yeah, I'm trying to sit with that for a minute because I think the way we define manliness for so long has just been a way that makes us hurt ourselves
Mm-hmm.
or not connect to or not connect to ourselves. And
So here's a little slightly deeper psychology for it, in my opinion, and I've done a little bit of thinking on this. I think it actually ties in with the black and white shift of media, because back in the day, black and white movies look unreal. So our manly attitudes from back in the day, we have somebody like John Wayne. I think that if we had real colorized movies of John Wayne back in the day, he wouldn't nearly be as manly as he did, because for some reason it makes it like a myth. We have a manly myth of what we think that a guy should be. And it's carried through in our violent media but I think that's the seed of where it started from. I think that in the gestation of it, and we have progressed a lot in society as a whole, and especially when it comes to manliness and it comes to emotional regulation, it comes to dealing with these kind of toxic subjects. Because think back in the day, do you remember the TV show The Honeymooners?
yeah,
You remember the tagline from The Honeymooners? You remember the main punchline from The Honeymooners?
yeah, power right in the kisser.
One of these days, Alice, bang, zoom, right in the kisser. The guy's talking about punching his wife in the face because she talks too much. And
it was like the funniest show on TV.
That's the main laugh line of the main sitcom, first sitcom we ever had. That's the first hit show we ever had, was a guy laughing about punching his wife in the face because she talks too much. Like that's really where society was. What I talk about,
ridiculous.
I talk in my story about going from battered woman shelter to battered woman shelter. Why did battered woman shelters exist? Battered woman shelters exist because it was a place for women to run so men could have the house.
What?
Yeah. When a woman is beaten by her husband, the woman gets to go to the shelter, the man gets to keep the house.
I didn't know that.
That's exactly why it was created. That's why those things were created. So that the woman who wants to run away has somewhere to run and have the shelter so the man can stay at home.
What the hell? Well, because even those shows, like those sitcoms, as crazy as that punchline was, like it was both the men and women watching that show laughing at it.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
The whole thing is crazy. I think even like sometimes now, unfortunately, like if we're asking men what are men like, unfortunately, the men now, most of them are just saying like, oh, we need to be strong and stoic and all of these things, and some are going a little bit further. But I think we really do need that evolution to allow men to see themselves in the world differently. Because if you were to ask women in the 1950s, well, what do you want to do with your life? What should a woman be like? And it would be like, oh, I would like to be a housewife in this home, or maybe like they weren't saying like astronauts, entrepreneurs, like all of these athletes.
That's why I use as my main example of manliness as Mr. Rogers, because I think that people who think, if you look at Mr. Rogers, you see a soft, sweet, gentle man who just talks really kindly, and he was a preacher, and he mainly has a show for children, and everything is very kid-based with his things, and he's very sweet. But the reason why he's a real example of manliness, if you take an objective look at it, This guy came out of nowhere, made a PBS show on a shoestring budget, filmed it every single day for decades with no budget, no staff, and got it to be, and then went along to everywhere to the point where he's talking in front of Congress about how kindness needs to be spread because that's the one message he wants to get out to people. He fought against the media, he fought against business, he fought against the stereotypes of what humans should do, he fought against the stereotypes of what programming on television should be. He had to create his own space as far as public television was even concerned. All of that stuff, he fought against the same kind of things that you fight against when you're dealing with a business, dealing with logging, dealing with trucking, dealing with anything else. That same kind of business structure, he fought against on a mass scale and did it to the point where he kept his sincerity and kept his honesty to everybody across the country his entire career, never wavered, never changed his message, never changed his opinion of who he is and what he is and who he should be. Didn't alter his opinion to fit the whims of other people because other people thought he needed to be a certain way. That to me, that's what a man is.
Yeah, I like that because I think we have to tell men that they can be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have. There's a big disincentive in society for men to be who they are because they don't want to lose their friends groups. They don't want their parents to disapprove of them. They don't want their wives and girlfriends to run away because they're vulnerable and crying and having a meltdown because let's say something going through something in their life. And so I really love that message that men can just they can be fully who they are and they don't have to like check in with everyone.
Yeah.
Obviously the people that love you and you respect. Like there's a little bit of nuance to this, but I love that message.
Yeah, to me, a man is owning up your responsibilities, taking accountability for your actions, owning all of you, and being able to express all of you to whoever you are. Now, if all of you is you really like to get in martial arts, you really like to do that, you really like to work out, that's fine, that's okay. Be all of you. If all of you is you want to be a painter, you want to be express yourself that way, do that too.
Right.
If you want to, if your emotions and who you are, the lack of the ability to not be affected by the judgment of others in the correlation of your own personal data to make yourself who you are. That to me is a true man. To be able to stand in front of anybody saying that's not who you should be and said, nope, this is who I am. Regardless of what you think, regardless of your judgment, you can judge me. That's fine. You don't like me from the other side of the room. That's okay with me. I'm going to be who I am right here, and I'm going to be fine with that because I am okay.
I would just like us to all accept that there is multiple different versions of what a man, and just like there's many different versions for what a woman is. You can be very quote unquote traditionally feminine. You can be a lesbian lumberjacker. Like these are all women.
Well, and so
when we think of this idea of manhood, we don't think of like a very dainty gay man as a man, but that's also a man. So you can have. Go ahead.
To tie it into the more universal concept that I was talking about earlier. So we have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Sure.
Okay, so to the people who are listening, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have the concept where you have the base needs of the survival. You have to eat, sleep, breathe. If you can do that, you can want something. You want something, you can dream for something. You can dream something, you can aspire to something. To the flourishing at the top, like a pyramid. Okay, now take that concept and flip it upside down. Take the concept of a triangle going upside down. That bottom point, in my opinion, is self-immolation. That thought of I'm not good enough in me. I need to burn myself apart to fit my world. Okay, now that germ then expresses itself depending on how that branch flourishes out. Now, men early on tend to get more violent because early on in men's life, violence is currency. It's not just a status symbol. In early kid years of men's life, you can be dirty, you can be fat, you can be smelly. If you can break something, you can exist. It's just a fact. Violence is currency in young men's world. So if violence is currency at school and in your life, and then your home life, like I said, is abject hell, and your violence is and aggression is in your head, and your friends are toxic, and that friend group is toxic, that vocabulary is going to sprout till you get to the top. We end up with someone like I was at 17 years old, who just wants to burn out the entire world and just wants to kill everybody. Okay, now women, and I'm of course not a woman myself, but I'm a dad of many daughters, and women, in my opinion, tend to be more introspective and introverted. I'm not good enough in here. My body's not good enough. My heart's not good enough. My beauty's not good enough. I don't sound good enough. I'm not smart enough. And it's more self-lacking. As opposed to with men, it's more I need to break that thing. I need to dominate that thing. Women, it's I'm not good enough in here. I'm broken inside. Okay. And I really feel like at the top level of this pyramid, if you go to the very top of it, that there isn't any difference in the pain that I was feeling at the bottom of it when I was just about to shoot up a school than what a model feels when she's throwing up in her cup for her photo shoot, or what a gangbanger feels when he's about to shoot up somebody to fit into his clique, or what the embezzler feels when he's taking a bunch of money out and he's blowing it all on and gambling it all away and drinking himself to death. That sense of self-loathing is the same. And that if we the more we can see that, the more we can try to short circuit those steps underneath and get back into the positive aspect of it, to try to again cultivate the positive side, to be able to express emotions and be able to express yourself and be able to express manliness in a less violent, less aggressive manner, because there's more branches on that tree than just violence and aggression. There's,
Yeah, cause is that cat gonna die?
yeah. No. Go away, Pocket. Sorry,
Because I was gonna say, because I think like men also do have that deep well of emotion that they're not good enough, but the way they present depression becomes a lot more violent, both inside and outside. And so I definitely agree with that. And I want to be respectful of your time. So I was just thinking, when you're going through all of these discussions with people and you're telling your story, and I'm sure a new something comes to mind while you're thinking about it. How has your how has your opinion of that era and your life and who you are changed through you coming out and telling these stories?
So I wouldn't change anything I went through because it made me who I am. But the one thing it did definitely show me is that to break the cycle, you have to see the cycle. You have to be able to own what happened and see it and move past it. And it's a conscious decision. We make a decision to go one way or the other. And the same way that Mike's positive words and Amber's birthday party had a scaffolding effect of positivity towards me, that's the same scaffolding effect that my negative comment to my kid calling them stupid could have on them the rest of their life. It's that same kind of effect. You never know on the negative side or the positive side what you might cause. So err to the positive, because that to me should be the goal. Again, give love to the ones you feel deserve it the least because they need it the most. That person can be yourself. To me, I love who I used to be, and I'm fine with who I used to be, because today I get to use that to help other people not go down that path. Because I went through enough of that path to show other people, hey, don't walk on that hill. Don't step on that rock. If that guy is stepping on that rock, listen to him, because maybe he needs help off that rock. Like that to me is a privileged and honored place to be. And I would not have been able to do it if I didn't live the life I lived.
That's such inspirational. I really appreciate you really digging into your story and sharing it for all of us. Like there's stuff that I wrote down that I want to think more about and do some journaling on, and it's really brought up thoughts that like will help me in a lot of the things that I'm thinking about as well. And I think your story is it's so specific, but also it's so universal in so many spots as well. So thanks for sharing your time with me and all of us, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So thanks for listening to No More, No Less. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. So please subscribe and rate the show if you enjoyed it. It'll help me create more amazing content and get that next little bit of validation that I so deeply crave. If you did enjoy it, well, that sucks. But to make sure, I think you should listen to my next 10 episodes and then decide. I mean, come on. Rome was not built in a day. I'm just getting warmed up here, guys. So thanks again. See you next time.